let's talk about sore losers. Not that one. No, not that one. Not, maybe that one later, but that's the one. That's the one I'm talking about. These are the worst losers of all time. Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about the lost cause of the Confederacy. Now, if you don't know, the American Civil War was fought over, let's just say, how can I put this? Slavery. And it seems that a lot of Southerners after the Civil War were kind of like, maybe that wasn't something we should have fought for and lost hundreds of thousands of lives over. This led to something called lost cause theories. They don't call it that, we call it that. We being people that are sensible enough to believe that the Union was right in its fight. And lost cause thinkers essentially came up with a long list of ridiculous excuses for why the war was justified and why the South did it for every single reason except slavery. They were lying, basically. So a lot of people contributed to this, particularly veterans. I mean, they certainly did, but probably the face of the movement, as it were, are these evil witches. I mean, the United Daughters of the Confederacy, people who spread lies, misinformation amongst Southern schools, and basically tried to get the younger generation to think, oh hey, we did it for a totally good reason, and not slavery, which was, again, a complete lie. But yeah, they came up with a whole list of reasons, and you've probably heard a lot of them. And I feel like it's always fun to come on here and just explain to you and everyone why they're completely wrong. So first of all, the crown jewel of lost cause theory is, which you have probably heard before, and you have probably heard somebody say a state's right to what? I'm just gonna really quickly throw a quote up here. The cornerstone speech, as it's called, is by the Confederate Vice President of the time, Alexander Stephens, and he goes out there to basically lay out at the beginning of the Civil War why it's happening. Can you guess what he said it was about? Our new government's foundations are laid. Its cornerstone rests upon the great truth that the is not equal to the white man, that slavery and subordination to the superior race is his natural and normal condition. This, our new government, is the first in the history of the world based upon this great physical truth. Yada yada yada, yada yada. I hate this guy. Also, regarding states' rights in general, this is South Carolina's Declaration of Secession. They were the first state to secede, and arguably the most pro-slavery state that existed. And yeah, it was all about slavery. It was the whole thing was about slavery for them. They don't even try to hide that, like, slightly. So the second thing is, it was a war of northern aggression. These evil northern people coming down and ruining our southern way of life. Do you know who fired the first shot in the Civil War? It wasn't the North. This is Fort Sumter right here. Lovely place, very historical, very important. And it's also the site of the first shots being fired in the Civil War. Do you want to know what happened? It was being blockaded by the South before the war had actually kicked off, and the North said, oh, okay, it's a federal garrison, we're not going to leave it. We're actually going to send a boat there full of food to give to the men who live there, basically because they're our troops, they're being starved by you, we're not sending them any weapons, we're just going to give them food. So what did the Confederacy do? They fucking blew it up. And yeah, that's kind of how the hostilities kick off. So, in the kindest and most polite way possible, that's bullshit. Here's another nonsensical thing. The South fought with honor and better generals, and we knew what we were doing, and it was just because of them damn Northerners and their numbers that they won. No shit. What do you think was gonna happen? This whole argument as it gets into it is that the South fought better and that there was more honor. It's like, if you start a war with a much, much larger power for no reason aside from slavery, what do you expect is gonna happen? At a bare minimum, you fired the first shots, you didn't have the resources to win that war, and you lost. That's not a lesson in honor. That's a lesson in stupidity. You know how I know these guys are better generals? The Confederacy isn't here anymore. Yeah. And yeah, that's kind of like the quick summary. I really wanted to get that off my chest because I've been seeing more of this nonsense around lately. And quick side note, Robert E. Lee, the man of the South, everyone tends to think of him as a hero. He sucked. And here's the thing, he owned a lot of slaves, was a particularly harsh owner of them, and when he died, it rained so hard that they couldn't properly bring in a coffin, so he had to be buried in one that was too small without his shoes in the mud. Even the heavens were like, nah, he's not getting it good. Anyway, that's a rant. I should do more like this.